Let's dive into this, though. This fires me up because this isn't broken into two pieces that we're not going to be looking at here. So I'm going to break the offensive line down, which obviously we know the struggles we had last year where it ranked 131st out of 132. It was atrocious. There's no secret in there. But it had a silver lining, and the silver lining was the talent was there. It just wasn't synced up. So Jake Slaughter, we've already talked about this, had the highest PFF score for a center last year, the number one center, according to PFF. So that's where it starts. Great stuff. And he was fantastic. He was flawless last year. But it takes 5 = 1. It takes everybody to be dialed in. The both guard position, I would say from the left guard to center to right guard to right tackle was where the error, the breaks in the armor were. And I know Najee was in that left guard, but Richie Leonard, right, was the starter. And so Najee was kind of fighting through that. And then it was Mazuka and then Damian George. So let's get into it now. So we've got the number one overall PFF according to last year, Jake Slaughter. We're headed into this year with 3 of the top 10 in the SEC, right, with a minimum of 300 snaps, with Brandon Crenshaw and Devin Manuel. Brandon Crenshaw comes from San Diego State, and Manuel comes from Arkansas. And then, of course, Austin Barber, who I think is going to have a fantastic season. He dealt with an injury last year. So think about that. Top 10 a tackle with an injury. Now we're going to have 3 of them, 3 of the top 10 on Florida football. So now you've got 4 of the top offensive tackles or offensive linemen, according to PFF, on your team with, listen here, Najee Harris, who's going to have a phenomenal sophomore campaign. Excited to see what he's able to do. And then Damian George, who we're going to get into a little bit more here. We're going to break down his weight and what he's done. But I spoke highly about him moving into the guard position, and I think he is going to be electric in that guard position. And it excites me because it feels like everything's starting to click. And we heard Keith just say he felt like on the trenches we weren't that far off, and now this elevates us to a whole nother game. And it allows for those key pieces that we were talking about, the LJ McCrays, the DJ Lagos, but for this year to be the Eugenes, the Mertz, right? The Pups. Those are going to be our difference makers this year. And if this is established, you want to talk about Kool-Aid boys. We better buckle the F up.
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about because, like, we talk about offensive line, and I think the last time Florida had really good offensive line play was, I would have to go back to, I think, 2018 when they had good offensive line play. And you saw where Felipe Franks, he had time to throw the football. You saw where we could bust big runs with Jordan Scarlett, and we were pushing just about every opponent around. Now, you fast forward, you get all these guys in, you improve, like I said, and strength and conditioning is a big factor in this. And I'll even say this. Do you remember the 2017 Florida team that went 4-8 with Jim McElwain? And the players kept saying, okay, well, we have to get our own trainers to work out because there's no big time strength and conditioning, nothing like that. Jim McElwain was really, really piss poor doing that. You go next year, 2018, you bring in Savage, a good strength and conditioning coach. That team played a lot more physical, a lot more grit with that team, and they were pushing people around the offensive line. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but you look at the PFF numbers, you look at what they're bringing in the transfer portal, and it excites you as a Florida Gator fan. And also look at, everybody's upset about Trevor Etienne leaving, going to Georgia. You still have a running back that had 2 800-yard seasons on a bad offensive line. You get him
with
some good
Trevor
offensive
Etienne
line
behind him.
With Trevor Etienne behind him, you get him good offensive line with some good players that can push some people around. This dude's he's easily going 1,000, if not more, this year. So I think it's really, really cool and intriguing to look at. Obviously, it still has to pan out against SEC competition, and these guys got to stay healthy as well. But I think it's really, really something exciting to look for, especially as a Florida Gator fan, when you see just those numbers. Obviously, the guys that you brought in and the returning guys, and Damian George moving to right guard. Hopefully, that is a better spot for him as opposed to the offensive tackle position, where it looks like Brendan Crenshaw, Dixon, or so will clear that up a little bit.
Yeah, and look, these are the things that you point to in the offseason. It's talking season. So you try to find lights, and this isn't like I'm not even, this is what PFS posting out, and it's like, wow, this is, again, you feel like, hey, things are moving in the right direction, and you have the data to back it up. Now, again, even Q Lee just said it, I don't care until I see it on the football field. I understand. It's got to translate. We're not there.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
we're putting pieces together, and I felt like I've said this before. I said before this data come out. I'm a feeler kind of guy. I've said that before. I'm getting better with the data, and it's exciting because I feel a certain way, and sometimes I can't maybe articulate it the way that I want it to. But it feels good when I feel like, hey, I've said that. I feel that on paper we are better, and then this comes down. It's like, all right, cool. I'm not crazy. I know a little bit from time to time. Sometimes I hit it on the head, and this is just supporting that. So look, the O line is something that we've heard a lot about, a lot of great things about the quantity and the quality. They feel really good about the offensive line and where it is. Bryce Lovett, Fletcher Westfall, Christian, I can't think of his last name, Cam Waits. There's a lot of other guys that I have that aren't even part of this starting staff that we are excited about. And I think it's
Yeah.
going to translate to recruiting as well too, which we were kind of speaking about with Keith earlier. So this is good stuff. This thing dropped, and I was like, we got to talk about it.
I just like the fact that there's more depth and there's guys that have been there at least 1 year, whether they've played or not. They've been there at least 1 year. They've been into the system.
Solid.
Well, obviously have experienced the new strength and conditioning staff, which we'll get into. And I think it's just exciting. I think for now, like Florida Gator fans can finally say, hey, we have depth pretty much almost at all positions right now. So I think that is the most intriguing thing about this season. And obviously, Graham Mertz coming back for his second year as a Florida Gator, and he had a pretty impressive season last year. But we want to see him take the next step. I mean, good offensive line play will help him take the next step.
And allow for those wide receivers that we've picked up to take it to another level as well. Guys, we're at 520 people in here. 30 more likes to 200. Let's get there before the show ends. Let's